In the quiet moments before the world wakes up, there's a place where pain meets peace, where every breath feels like a prayer and grief stands still. We carry the weight of what was and search for meaning in the smallest things. And sometimes all it takes is one moment to remind us we're still here, still healing.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Brief Let's Talk About It podcast. You guys know who it is. This is Tony Lynch, and yes, I'm the host of this podcast, and we are your number one podcast to bring you stories around death, doubt, and grief, all the messiness that comes in between, with some amazing people out here changing people's lives one heartbeat at a time. Now, before we get started, I would like to say, if this is your first time tuning in, do me a favor, head on over to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification, so you'll be notified every time that we drop a new episode. But most importantly, this is a live stream. So if you have any questions or comments, please put them in the comment section. We'll be sure to answer them as we go. Now, without further ado, well, one more thing before I bring on my next guest. I would like to say that this is for educational purposes only. Now, without further ado, I'm going to bring on my next guest, Ileana, to the show. Ileana, how you doing?
I'm good. Very, very
That's
hot.
great.
It's hot here in the UK right now, and yeah, good.
You know, I do understand. It's been hot all over the place. Summertime came, was like, I'm here, and it's just been wreaking havoc on people, So yeah, it's great. It's great to have you on the show. Before we get started, go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience.
So I'm Ileana. I'm an emotional awareness coach. I help millennials with ADHD to empower their unique selves and thrive. But before that, I had a lot of trauma that I had to deal with before becoming a coach. And recently, you may not know this, I passed my neuro-linguistics programming certification. So
Oh,
I've made a
wow.
bow to add to the
Congratulations.
string.
Yeah, congratulations. So yeah, let's talk about the work that you do. Um, what does the work that you do entail?
So I either speak to people one-to-one or in a group. I tend to speak to a lot of different people. So I speak to men and women in regards to confidence, to emotional regulation, to help them better adjust to the fact that they have ADHD. So some things that you have in regards to ADHD are a superpower. Like hyperfocus is amazing. You can sit there, you can focus in on what you want to do, but you can be at it for hours if you like the subject. But other things aren't so great. So self-confidence is a massive issue amongst people with ADHD, as well as overthinking, overwhelm, things like that. So I help people basically get their confidence back again and give them tips so that they're not struggling, actionable tips as well. In a few, oh my God, 21st of July, I do my 5-day free challenge, which is going to be amazing. It's called Ignite Your Focus, to help people focus on their tasks so they don't have this chronic overwhelm, which people struggle with a lot. Basically, internally, people with ADHD have like an inner monologue. With women, it's a lot more bigger than with men. Men tend to have outside ADHD where they're really hyper, whereas women tend to internalize it. So whereas a normal person thinks about a couple of thoughts and then has answers to those thoughts, people with ADHD, it just builds and builds and builds, and the questions keep coming. And it's like a mug that overflows. So you end up like spilling over, exploding, and being completely overwhelmed with everything that's going on in your head. To stop that, there is a couple of things you can do. I tend to do some crazy things to emotionally regulate, but one of them is journaling, so brain dumping, putting all the thoughts on paper so that you're not so overwhelmed. So I teach people how to do this one-to-one and in groups, depending on what they prefer.
I love that. I love that. Now, you said some things. I want to touch on it a little bit. You said that men kind of process ADHD a little bit more externally and
Mm-hmm.
everything. Explain that a little bit, because I think there's some people out there that may be struggling, but they do not even understand, how they're processing these things. Because just like ADHD, I have a disorder, which is sensory processing input disorder. And if you're not careful, you can be misdiagnosed with both of them. Now, there's slight differences when it comes down to it. And, like I think a lot faster than the average person. But there's techniques that I use, like lifting weights as part of my therapy. It helps me slow things down. As far as writing things down, I struggle with writing things down because everything is up here. It's like my brain is like a library, right? Um, and so I'm able to categorize the different things in alphabetical order inside of my brain. So if I ever need to recall it, like most people, um, how most people may struggle with short-term memory, I can put mine in and recall it
Yeah.
at any time that I want to. I can recall different conversations with people, and I like to say I have an exact memory because I remember everything. Um, so when we talk about men processing ADHD externally, uh, elaborate on that for a little bit, please.
So they're more impulsive, they're more hyperactive, like restless. They talk a lot faster. Um, they have difficulty waiting their turn in conversations, um, difficulty controlling their emotions, and they take more risks. Um, so obviously, it shows up mainly in school more for the men than it does the women because they're the class clowns. They don't want to sit there and listen to the lesson. But that's the same in relationships. They struggle with communication, self-esteem, mental health. They have an increased risk of depression, amongst other things.
Now, when it comes down to ADHD and dealing with trauma, is it more difficult to deal with trauma when you have ADHD? Because I know that overthinking can be a factor in that, right? So let's elaborate on that a little bit. Let's talk about ADHD and trauma. How do we get people to process the things that we experience in life in a more healthier way, right? What tools that we can use?
Yeah. So um, there are a few tools that you can use. So journaling is definitely one of them. So I tend to do. It's really hard to say. So I tend to journal in the mornings and the evenings. So in the mornings, I wake up, I journal. This is to get everything out of my brain onto paper, and then to see what tasks I need to do and accomplish, and then I narrow it down even more. So anything that I can just get rid of, I do, because otherwise I'm going to end up with a mile long list and get overwhelmed. And the same as night at the night and at night time. Now I'm trying to speak too fast. At night time, I tend to journal as well to get everything out. Um, Also, to have a supportive environment is massively important. Um, and environment is important anyway in regards to it needs to be tidy because you you see mess and it affects your mood, especially when it comes to women more than some men. But I don't like a messy house. I can't stand it. It irritates me if things if I'm finding things hard, as in mentally, I will look at the house, and if it is a mess, it will overflow and leave me overwhelmed. Exercise is a really good one as well. Although some people don't like to do it, it releases dopamine and serotonin and all that good stuff that helps your brain. function. So that's a good one. Obviously, nutrition is also important, and sleep. Sleep affects everything in regards to mood. But it also depends on trauma and how much trauma you've had, how serious it is, to whether some of these techniques actually work or not. That sounds really like I'm playing it down, but some people connect differently to others. So some people can go through therapy. Other people don't like to talk, especially. I'm going to generalize, and I don't like generalizing, but males tend not to like to talk to people. They talk to females, and they don't like to go counselling. Because there is still a stigma involved, which is horrendous, and I hate it. But there is still stigma involved when it comes to men talking and therapy and things like that. There is, so obviously you've got planners and stuff, but that doesn't always work. I use an app called Clarify ADHD, which helps me plan my tasks in 30-minute stints. Time management is massive when it comes to ADHD because you get time blindness. So you're late for everything unless you're on time, but I tend to be either an hour early or like 10 minutes late. There's no in between.
Right.
Because you either sit there and wait for your appointment all day, which is silly, but you know you've got the appointment, so you sit there and you wait for it because that's what you do. But I tend to have to plan to where I'm going because I have dyslexia, dyspraxia, borderline personality disorder as well. Everything kind of merges into one. My dyspraxia especially because I can't read a map. So if I don't know where I'm going, I get rather lost. But that's by the by. There's a lot of different things you can do. There's different therapies as well, but mindfulness is great. It's a meditation. It sounds woo-woo, but it works. Breathing techniques are amazing as well. So breathing through a straw, doing rainbow breathing and stuff like that really help reset you. Not only that, so when you're in like overwhelm, eat sour sweets because or hold ice or drink a cold drink because your brain has to stop what it's doing, stop overthinking, and then deal with the fact that there's something sour in my mouth or the drink's cold. Like it shocks your nervous system into like a reset.
Okay, so it sort of tells the brain to slow itself down because it has an extra sensory in there that can be pretty extreme. So it kind of redirects everything. Okay, all right. So now let's get into your story. Let's talk about the things that you've had to go through in order to get to where you are today.
No problem. So I am 7 years now. So I've had a lot going on. I've got borderline personality disorder, which I was only diagnosed 7 years ago. So let's head back to the start. When I was younger, I went through a lot of trauma, emotional, physical trauma, as well as nasty stuff. I don't know what I can say and what I can't say.
Oh, this is your story. So, yeah.
Is it PG? Is it PG-13 or?
It's rated R. So there's a restriction. There's a restriction up here for kids. So you can speak your mind. You know, because there's adults out there that are going through the same things, and so we like to keep it very raw and open. You know what I'm saying? Don't sugarcoat.
Okay, I'm not going to. So I unfortunately got in with the wrong crowd when I was younger. So I had a lot of stuff going on at home. I love my parents to bits, don't get me wrong. I have an amazing relationship with them now. But it wasn't a great relationship back then. I brought out my sister and I was dealing with a lot. When I was 13, I was raped. So that started off a lot of self-hatred. I didn't know I had borderline personality disorder or ADHD or potential autism or any of that stuff. So all of my feelings, I didn't know what to do with them. I wasn't taught how to emotionally regulate at all. I ended up trying to commit suicide a couple of times when I was quite young. So I was about 16 when I started self-harming. No, I was 13 when I started self-harming, but 16 when I started really going overboard with thoughts of suicide and suicidal ideation. Then when I got older, obviously it got worse because the thoughts were more. I hated school, didn't really get on with school because I was dyslexic and dyspraxic, and I couldn't do what other people could do, and I masked a hell of a lot because that's what women do. Women mask more than men, as far as I'm aware, in regards to how they feel and ADHD and stuff. When I got to, what was it, 21? So by the age of 21, 22, I had been raped 4 times by different people. And then I was sexually assaulted by my landlord. When I was living with him, and he was a friend, so I had that happen. I moved to Malta. When I moved to Malta, because it's a different country, it works differently to over here. I was told the wrong dose of my medication and ended up walking in front of a car because I was as high as a kite, and then was sectioned under the Mental Health Act because I was a danger to myself and I was a danger to other people. I was sectioned for 2 months in a completely foreign country, and Mount Carmel, which is the hospital that I was in, is now getting absolutely slated for being the worst mental health hospital on the island, and it's no longer fit for purpose. When I was in there, it was horrible because I was literally in a routine, but I was followed around by a nurse everywhere. I didn't have any privacy, not even to shower. I was literally watched showering. I couldn't go anywhere. I had no friends in the ward or in Malta at that time. Well, I did, but not very many, so no one could come visit me. My husband was my fiance at the time. He was working. But 7 o'clock, you woke up, you had breakfast, you had, then it was visiting time. If you didn't have any visitors, you had to just sit there. Then you had like a snack. Then it was nap time. At lunchtime, you had to have a nap. Otherwise, there was nothing to do. Then you had like another sandwich or whatever, another visiting hour before dinner, and then you had to be in bed by 6. Obviously, as an adult, like that's not okay, but you were literally like you had to have medication. You were knocked out by 6. So I was there for like 2 months, and I was in and out. So when I did my second month, I had more freedom. I was able to like leave and go on like weekend leave and day leave and stuff to try and reintegrate me back into society, but it didn't work very well. But there I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. Then after all of this mess, when I got out and moved back to the UK, I then had issues in the UK. So I came back, I was absolutely fine. Unfortunately, I lost a baby I want to say it was before 2019. So I lost a baby, I had a miscarriage, and that sent me a bit loopy again because I couldn't deal with my emotions. So I was diagnosed with general adjustment disorder at that point. When I eventually fell pregnant with my eldest, Elliot, in 2021, it was during COVID. And unfortunately, obviously, you don't get the help you need. You didn't get the help you needed during COVID. COVID was a mess for everyone, and especially the mental health system. So I had, at the time, I had mental health help. So before COVID, I had a psychiatric nurse that came to visit me, basically. But because she was an agency nurse, she got dismissed as soon as COVID came because she was agency, and I was left with no help. So when I was pregnant and heavily pregnant, it must have been about 8 months, I was ringing up the mental health ward nearly every day because I didn't deal with my emotions. I had a baby in my belly I didn't know how to bond with. I had my hormones raging. I wasn't on medication because I was told not to be on medication because it could affect my pregnancy. And I literally walked into the hospital to ask for help. And I mean, walked into the hospital, told them to cut out my baby, or that I would if they didn't give me the help I needed. Because at that point, I was ringing the mental health helpline every day, non-stop, asking for help. And all I'd get was the same story, like, call the duty manager, call the duty manager. Once I got through to the duty manager, it could have been a 40-minute wait for a phone call. And I didn't get any help. When I went into the hospital to say that I need help, I asked my midwife before I went in, and they said, "Yeah, go straight to A&E. You need to be helped." When I was in the hospital, unfortunately, I overheard a conversation from the crisis team doctors saying that I shouldn't be there because I'm pregnant. I should have spoken to my midwives, and I'm basically wasting time. An hour later, they saw me. They decided that I did need the help, and that I needed to stay overnight. But after I stayed overnight, because I was pregnant and because it was during COVID, they decided it was unsafe for me and baby to stay in the hospital. So I was discharged and saw the crisis team over here for a week. And then they decided that I was healthy enough and fine and could be left to my own devices. This was all before I had my baby. Obviously, that wasn't the case, and I still needed help, but no one seemed to want to help. So after that, and after having my lovely son, he was born fine, I realised that no one's going to save me. No one's going to be there to save me. The government's not going to help. I'm not going to get any help. Yes, I may get counselling, but that's not going to help. It's going to be like a 12-week thing, and then it's going to stop. I need to help myself. So that's what I did, not only in the mental health ward to get out, I did all the workbooks under the sun and listened to everything that the doctors said to me to get myself better. I ended up developing my own tools, my own coping mechanisms, and got out. But I realised that other people are going to be struggling. Other people are not going to get the help. Once they deal with the hospital and they are left to their own devices, they're going to have to reintegrate back into society. And not many people can, because it becomes a safe place. The hospital becomes a safe place, or, your environment becomes a safe place. So I decided to help others. And that's when I first got diagnosed with ADHD, that's what I decided to do, become a coach, help others. And I went down the mental health route. I've got many certifications now. I've got some in counselling, some in mental health, but mainly I've got life experience, and I don't want anyone else to struggle like I did, because it's not fair. I literally could have cut my baby out and hurt myself and my baby. And there's a lot of people that are still there, still struggling, especially with ADHD and how overwhelmed you get. There is not much help out there. They will tell you to go on medication, and that's about it. There's not many. There's now a lot of coaches, and ADHD is seen more frequently, but that's because people back in the 90s and further weren't necessarily picked up on to have ADHD, due to the fact that the first tests for ADHD were for men specifically. I can't remember why, but that's what happened, and now they're slowly coming in to bring in female ADHD and female quizzes for females. But that is a bit of a story.
No, you touched on a lot of things right there, and the one thing that really stood out, and it's always been standing out. There's a couple of things. The first one, the mental health epidemic that we have now has now been brought out to the forefront. So there's a lot more awareness now, right? Considering, about 20 years ago, it was very rarely talked about, and people kind of dismissed it, saying, "Oh, you're crazy," or something like that. So there was the stigma that came along with that. You also touched on one thing, and I want to add to it, because being a male myself, one of the things that I never did was ever talk about what was going on with me, right? So if I was hurting or something like that, I pretty much dealt with it because that's the way I was always taught. Now, what I found was, as during the course of time, is that both men and women have that similarity depending on where they were raised, right? And it becomes one of those things. It's survival of the fittest. That was one of the ways that I've always looked at life. Like, I have to survive this. It's survival of the fittest, right? So emotions will get you killed, and all of these different things that come along with that affected how I maneuvered through this world, right? And then another thing, the medication. One thing, because I am a mental health practitioner myself, and one thing that I have been advocating against is medication versus conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Not everything needs to be medicated. Now, there are extreme cases where medication has a role, but it should not be the
100%.
solution,
Mm-mm.
right? It
No.
should not be the solution, right? You know what I'm saying? It should be a temporary thing to help people kind of get themselves calm, and slow down enough to where they can really rationally think about the things that are going on, right? In a way to where, they can start to ask for help. So,
Yeah.
I don't want everybody to go out there and, oh, I got to be on. No, I don't want you to do that, because I don't like that. Okay. Um, but there are ways of going about doing it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be around the right people, and
100%.
the support has to be there for you as well. So, and again, it takes time to get there, but with the right people, they can help you maneuver in those different areas. And then we can begin to unpack the rest of it, like your hidden traumas and things like that, because a lot of times people don't even know how your traumas can affect your mental health, right? You know what I'm saying? And it can lead to other things like addiction, you know?
Addiction, unfortunately, is something that happens very frequently because of
Yeah.
trauma, because of mental health. And not only that, addiction can be to food, not only drugs, not only alcohol.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you may not see it as an addiction as well. Um, Unfortunately, I personally have a very addictive personality, very, very addictive personality. And I learned that very young. So I stayed away, luckily, I stayed away from drugs and things like that. But I do get addicted to things quite easily, especially when it involves a dopamine hit. So my favorite thing is karaoke, like completely dopamine hit karaoke. But if I could do, like, if I think if I knew about things, well, I say knew, if I wasn't so innocent and wasn't so hard-headed, I think I would have been hooked on drugs a very, very long time ago, because of the hit, because of how addictive it would have been to just take away my problems. But that's also like painkillers, and a lot of mental health medication is addictive, and it's really hard to come off them. But not only that, it's the side effects of coming off them are so hard to deal with. It's like not being on medication it all over again, and then you have to realize that weaning yourself off is better than just doing cold turkey. But then what do you supplement it with? So I've learned a lot about what we lack in regards to ADHD. So people with ADHD usually lack B6, which is a vitamin that produces or helps produce serotonin, dopamine, and I can't say the name of the other one because it's too long and I can't remember the wording. But it helps produce those things. And then you've got B12, which helps produce energy. We struggle with a lot of memory loss and what was I doing, and what was I saying. So things like choline is good for you. L-theanine is good for clean, but this is for clean energy, not for things that, like, not for sugar crashes. Because I could hit Monster day in, day out, and I would have the biggest high. But the sugar crash afterwards and the slump that I would go in afterwards wouldn't help me. So it's nutritional as well as medicinal. Like I was on SSRIs, so fluoxetine and quetiapine, for a very, very long time because my borderline personality disorder was really bad, and I needed those two drugs to keep me level. I don't take them anymore because I've realised that, well, I've weaned myself off them, apart from fluoxetine because I need that daily, otherwise I'm a rage monster. But I learned what works, and I've added vitamins and things to my system that help and help promote better health for me. If you can come off medication, it's highly recommended because the stuff that it does to your insides as well as your brain, it's not great. But I am not a doctor. I am not a medical professional, so I do not advise coming off your medication cold turkey. But I do advise talking to people about it so that you're not on medication permanently, because sometimes some people don't agree with it at all. Like they really don't. They have other issues, so they can't be on, for example, Adderall for ADHD medication and things like that. They can't be on it, so they go down different routes. I am very spiritual. I'm very woo woo, so I 100% agree. Do like breath work and Reiki and things like that, rather than, because it energizes me and it makes me feel better. Same with meditation. I find meditation works for me. I can't get thoughts out of my head, but that doesn't mean you're not meditating and you're not taking that time to, relax your body, because I find that I'm on my nervous system is on high alert all day, every day. So finding that time to wind my body down really helps me sleep at night as well, because Lord knows people with ADHD do not like sleep.
I understand that. I don't have ADHD, but I don't sleep at all. I'm constantly working. Like my creative thoughts are constantly
Going.
wanting to do.
You've got a very
things.
energetic brain, so it's hard to switch up.
And that's just part of my disorder. My friend Shy over here on Instagram said supplement with self-love. And I think that's key too, right? Because anytime that you're going through something involving mental health, we forget to take care of ourselves, right? But most people misinterpret what self-love is. Now, I want to just give some examples and get your thoughts on this. But self-love can be anything from, going for a walk, grounding yourself in nature, like you said, meditation. I love working out. I love going out, things like that. Reading books. I love to educate myself because knowledge is key and wisdom is power. And so I'm constantly myself through books, things like that. Not just your normal books. Though. I love to read books that challenge my intellect and force me to learn different things. But to see the underlying words or meanings behind what they're putting in there, so I can read a book and dissect it and go, "Oh, this is what they mean." But then I can take in turn and apply those things to my life. So self-love, give me your thoughts on this. Self-love can be something that you can develop to improve your lifestyle in a way to where you can develop your own dopamine fixes, right?
Yes.
But I think there's a trigger that comes along with that too, to be able to trigger those dopamine fixes when you're going through it, right? Feeding the birds and squirrels in the morning to heal. I definitely understand.
Oh, that is lush. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, that is beautiful right there. Anybody else out there listening got any self-love tips that you use to help yourself get through your day-to-day tasks, or help you even ground yourself in your day-to-day? If so, just put it in the comment section.
Yeah, a lot of people do. Well, everyone recommends sunlight, so going out in nature, having that sunlight is really, really important. Obviously, as you said, exercise is a really good one. But self-care doesn't always have to be just that. It can be having a coffee, like an expensive Costa coffee, because sometimes you need that fix. But it can be literally sitting there with your favorite coffee in silence, in peace, or listening to a podcast with that coffee, just sitting with yourself. It doesn't have to be with anyone else. Watching your favorite movie, your comfort movie. It could be something as simple as that. Having your favorite meal for dinner, but cooking it, not just shoving it in the microwave, because that process of cooking it, you get that dopamine hit, the gratification afterwards. Cake is a great one. I'm highly allergic.
I love that.
Highly allergic to eggs. Highly allergic to eggs. So I used to absolutely crave cake. But the only place I can go currently, well, the only place I can get cake, unless I make it myself, is from Cake Box. So every so often I used to treat myself with a slice, but it's become very expensive to treat myself to a slice of cake. So I just make it myself now. But things like the things that help dopamine, I find when I'm struggling to start a task, is adding music to it. So I am very much my playlist is very eccentric. No, eclectic is the word. Very eclectic. So I can go from like hard rock screamo stuff to like high energy drum and bass. Like my playlist is mental. But adding that to a task like washing up, or cleaning, which I don't really enjoy, makes things so much better. It adds that dopamine hit, and I can do the task and sing along and dance along in my kitchen. Obviously, journaling is a massive one, because you get all your thoughts down, but also you can find patterns in your behavior. So if you are struggling and you read back and you see that there's been a dip at for women, a dip at a certain time a month just before your period, or even men, like sometimes like you have a dip at certain times because of stress, because of this, but you can notice the patterns and pick it up and then realize and do something about it before you get too bad. Obviously dietary supplements and things like that. Sleep is a great one, because sleep is important. I find that I struggle towards the end of the day. I have a massive slump. So if I have struggled, and usually it's when I've struggled sleeping, because I've got two smalls, my beautiful boys, are 4, and the youngest is 3 in August, and he still struggles to sleep through the night. So if I've had a bad night with him where I have been up all hours, I will nap during the day, and that's my little bit of self-care, because I am re-energizing myself for the next 5 hours that they're going to be awake and running around like loons. But it is little things like, having a bath, but having a bath with your special, most important bath salts or whatever to make you feel good. Doing your self-care, like face makeup and things like that, is great if you have the time. My latest thing is dopamine dressing. So I literally dress the way I want and don't care. So the other day I was literally I looked like a hippie. I looked like I was going to Woodstock. It was brilliant. I was wearing a like a jumpsuit thing, but it was like in bright colours, like yellows, greens, oranges, and I didn't care. I walked to the school like it. I got stared at like I was a crazy woman. But I don't care. I've got like green hair right now. But it gave me joy, and things like that are really important in life, especially when you see so much on the news and so much happens in life. You have to focus on what's good for you and what makes you happy in that moment. So like someone has already mentioned, sitting and feeding the birds, having that coffee in the morning before the kids have woken up, watching the sun rise, sunset, but having those 5 minutes really re-energizes you for the rest of the day. And it's important for your mental health. It's important to boost that dopamine. Obviously, like quick hits of dopamine are usually like physical exercise, like smelling cookies in the oven. That's like a great dopamine hit. But yeah, you've just got to be careful with it as well, that it's not a sugar fix, because sugar you crash.
Right.
Really, really hard, especially with ADHD. Like, having a monster is not a great thing, but to give you that energy to go through the day, sometimes it works, but that crash afterwards isn't great.
That's very true. There's a comment over here. I'm going to put this up here. Shai says she always tells her pals, eat, love, sex, and rock and roll. I love it. I do love it. But I want to touch on something that you said, being able to sit with yourself. And there's a challenge that comes along with that. And it's something that I encountered along my way during the grieving process, is that I didn't like myself very much, right?
Yeah.
And the reason being, because it took me a long time. I had been this individual, um, very valid, um, just very, very strategic in life, right? I had, trust issues and things like that. And sometimes I couldn't trust myself to do the right thing because I was so defensive. And it was something that I had to go back in and work on because I realized that I had been in survival mode so long throughout my life that I didn't know how to get out of survival mode. Like, whenever something would happen, I would revert back to I have to survive, right? And I would always prepare myself for the worst case scenarios. So,
Or
I would look at things and go, I need to prepare myself to be able to move around. Or situations I need to prepare myself for another person leaving me.
yeah,
And so when you're
it's
in that mode, yeah, it's really hard to really think outside of that. But it took me a long time to begin to trust myself, begin to look at myself in a different light, but also the words of affirmation that came along with that, because I would have to stare myself in the mirror every day, multiple times throughout the day, and I would have to tell myself, I love you, I forgive you.
it is
Right.
something that I am still learning. Still
Right.
learning.
Oh, it's a,
Still
it's a
learning.
development along the way, right?
Oh,
Because
100%.
it,
But I
yeah,
think, like, I lost it. I lost myself. I've lost myself numerous times. I've lost my mind numerous times. Trying to rebuild yourself is hard, and especially after motherhood, because you don't know who you are. When you become a mother, you're a mother, and that's it. You're solely a mother,
right.
and even if you get breaks, it's really hard to step out of that role. Um, Learning to love myself again, I find really hard. Really, really, really hard. I can't accept, even now, I can't accept praise. I don't find, like, I've achieved a lot in life, and I've come this far, and I'm still going. I can't, I still can't accept it as a compliment. If someone says, "Wow, you've been through so much," I'm like, "Yeah," and, like, I'm really humble about it, but it doesn't
Yeah,
sink in. It doesn't register because, yeah, I've done it, but so many people have been through so much worse. Like,
that's the key. That's right there. When you just said it right there, when it still shocks me that people think that I've gone through a whole lot in life, right? Because in my world, people go through this all the time,
yeah,
right? And so it still shocks me when people say this, but also there's a reality that comes along with it when you say, I know that there's people out there that live a totally different life than me, right?
mhm,
And they are the ones who grew up in a house and had a yard and had the big family. I grew up in the projects, right? I grew up
and was
quite
safe and
right, and they were
had
safe,
children,
whereas I had to build my safety within myself, right? And
and
because
it's
I've
hard
learned
to
right,
unlearn that. Very
and it's
hard to
really
unlearn
hard
that.
to unlearn it because it's really really easy when things kind of teeter totter and you don't understand it. It's real easy to go back to who you used to be because it's a defense mechanism. Hardest
Yeah,
part is the hardest part is, and
and
let me know what you think
your
about
inner
it, is
critic as well.
trust. Right. Well, it's the trust factor, right? It's trusting yourself. That's the hardest thing that you ever do is trust yourself. but also being able to bring other people into your life that you can also trust. Because sometimes you can get into a habit of surrounding yourself with people that you expect to do bad things to you, and they live up to those expectations. So it's a habitual habit to seek out things that are very familiar to you.
Yeah, 100%. Because it's what you know, it's habitual. It's you have confidence in yourself because you know what you've been through. You've done it over and over and over again. It's the fear of the unknown. So it's the fear of the unknown, but it's also all the what ifs. What if this happens? What if that happens? You run it, all the scenarios, all the worst case scenarios, round and round and round in your head, and you're just like, it's not worth it. But it is. At the end of the day, I've been with my husband for 10 years. I've been married to him for 6 years. He deserves a bloody medal. We have been through so much. And we've been together since we've known each other since we were 13, but we have been through hell and back. We're bringing up two smalls that are rather chaotic. But that trust that we have is implicit now. It wasn't back then.
Right.
It has to be built, and I I still find it hard to trust people. I find it hard to trust people with my children. I find it hard to trust people as friends. I have a very, very small friendship network, but that's because I've learned to try. I rely on myself. I've grown up knowing that I'm the one that I can rely on. I can't rely on anyone else.
Right.
I have family. I love my family, but again, like I'm so what's the word? I'm so independent that I just do it. I see that doing it myself is better. Luckily, my husband knows that if I need him, I need him. We've got, 10 years down the line, you should know. But it's so hard because you need that inner Karen as well, the negative inner Karen voices to go, because they don't help, saying you're not good enough and things like that, because it's habitual. You've been told it. You've been almost what's the word? Can't think of the word. My brain doesn't want to work. But you've been conditioned. There we go, conditioned. You've been conditioned to know that you're not good enough because people have told you so. You've grown up with it. You've grown up with you're a disappointment. You're not worth it, and it's hard to stop those thoughts when you've been constantly told it for years. But you kind of have to embrace your imperfections as well and seek support when needed, but also learn to trust, because if you don't trust, you're going to be isolated. You're not going to know anyone. You're not going to be with anyone. You're not going to make friends. You're not going to have a relationship, and so on and so forth. I feel there is a person that I know. When they got divorced, they became very isolated, doesn't celebrate birthdays, doesn't do Christmas, doesn't see his children, very much to the point where he's isolated himself completely. He's in a complete black hole. Doesn't trust anyone now. And that's sad because he can't move away from that. He's still grieving, can't move on from it.
Yeah.
Doesn't want help.
The crazy part about it is, Ileana, is that I can relate to that. Right? I can relate to that.
It's hard to go through something like that.
Well, no,
it's not easy.
I've gotten used to it, right? And the only reason why I can say that is because I'm comfortable with myself, and I'm scarred. Okay, I'm scarred. It's something that I'm still working on. So one of the things that life has taught me that people's going to leave me. So I learned to not take things personally, Right now, I do have a friendship circle. One of my buddies is up here right now, Clifton, and I've known him quite some time as well. But for the most part, those people that know me know that I'm always by myself, right? But
Mhm.
I, I get so used to people following their own paths that
Yeah.
I learned not to be attached, right? I know that
Yes.
people
Yeah.
have their own
Understandable.
lives. So,
Hmm.
I know not to invade in people's spaces, right? Because for one, I look at it like this. I have no family,
Mm.
right? I have no kids. My son is gone. My friends, they all have, significant others. They all have children. They
Yes.
all
Mhm.
have their family members and things like that. So I look at it and go, this is your family. You should spend time with your family. Although they do mean well, they're like, come on. And I'm like, I don't feel comfortable. This is your time with your family. You should spend that quality time with them. And so
Yeah.
I've gotten to the
And
habit of just going, I'll let you do this. I'll respect this. And I'll go over
I'm gonna go do
here.
my own.
Yeah, I'm gonna go do my own thing, you know? And it's just been, I know it's a habit. It's a habit that I'm
It
trying to
is a
break.
habit. It is a habit,
Right.
and it is hard to break something like that. But you're doing this. You're speaking to people every day.
Hmm.
You're not sitting at home in your four walls, not doing anything. You're exercising. You're going out. You're meeting people. This person isn't doing that. He refuses to help himself. His health
See,
is
now that's,
deteriorated,
yeah.
etc.
Now
So you're
I
doing a
get
lot
that.
more than what he's doing, and you are still progressing because you are learning.
Hmm.
You are sitting there reflecting on what you're doing and going, I really should do more socializing. I really should see my friends. I should do this.
Right.
You are seeing what you're doing and trying to change it, whereas this person isn't.
Well, yes, I do a lot more because to me, it's an obligation, right? You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? And what I mean by that is that I'm obligated to do this. It makes me feel good, right?
It gives you
I'm a
that dopamine.
servant of people, right? But most important, well, yes, and I want to add to that because I don't want people to have struggled the way that I have during my journey of healing
Exactly.
um, and dealing with the losses that I've ever had to deal with. Now, the part about it that people don't understand is that my world don't look the same as most people's anymore, right? It doesn't. And it's only because I live in a reality of this life is temporary.
Yeah.
One of the things I always promise myself, and this is probably one of the reasons why I isolate myself, I never want someone to feel bad if something was to happen to me,
Yeah.
right?
You don't want to get
So,
attached because of that.
well,
Hmm.
yes, yes and no. Now, you know what I'm saying? On the other side of it, it's like, if the opportunity was to ever present itself, I would be welcoming to it,
Hmm.
right? But there's a fear that comes along with it because when you've done this, like I've been doing grief work now for 6 years, and you hear the stories about the spouses passing away, right? You hear the stories about siblings. I've experienced all of that stuff with spousal loss, and I see the pain that is being carried along with them, and then I see the
Mm.
struggle that they have in order to move forward.
Feel-
So, in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
I don't want
Are
anyone
you
to
you
ever
in a
have to
way protecting yourself from that,
protecting myself and protecting other people.
or
I
feel
don't
like you're?
like,
Yeah.
yeah. So, I never
You
want
don't want yourself
anybody
to be a
to,
burden on, but you also don't want to go
right,
through that.
right. I never want to be a burden in anyone. So that's why I always, like whenever I meet people, um, I always look at them in a way of saying, when it's time for you to go and move on in your path, I know
You
how to
just let
let you
them.
go. I just let you go, right? And I will move out of your way. That's period. Like, I can accept things that way.
Yeah, there's definitely a saying that people come into your life for a reason, and if they leave, they're meant to leave for a reason.
Well,
There's definitely not
you
as
know,
in leave, pass away, leave, as in come in your
right, right,
life,
right,
affect
right.
you in a
Well,
certain way, introduce something that you need at that moment of time, and then go on their way to do
right.
something
It's
else.
it's a seasonal. It's a seasonal thing, right? Because everybody that comes into your life, there's a reason for it. Now, if you can enjoy the time that you have with them, you can learn and you can give back, and you can give to each other. You can learn and you can grow, and maybe even share some great laughs and build some great memories. I think it's worth it, right? The thing is, like, you have seasonal people, and sometimes you're the seasonal person. So
Yeah.
my whole life, I've well, it dawned on me that I'm the seasonal, right? And when you can accept that, life becomes a little bit more accept.
Easier.
Well, it's accepting. It's never easy because when
Life
people,
is never easy, but easier in the sense that
it's
you can
easier,
do it.
right? Because you can look at life and just go, I get it, right? I get it, and it makes life simple.
Yeah.
Makes life just really, really simple. It's not personal. One of the things that we're working with men, or working with people in general, they always say life is hard. I go, no, life is not hard. Life is honest. And
Mm.
what I mean by that is that life never tells you that it's going to do this or that. Life says it is what it is. I'm going to challenge you every step of the way. And if you put false expectations on me, you may be disappointed. So
Mm-hmm.
what I find was that we inflict wounds on ourselves, not
Yep.
intentionally, but they're self-inflicted, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I have a saying: self-inflicted wounds are the worst ones. So don't ever have expectations of life. Have a goal so you can so you know a path to work on, but expect life to come in and challenge you every step of the way,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it can be fun. It can be really, really fun when it comes down to it. So perception is reality when it comes down to it.
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah. So all right. Wow, man, this great conversation. Definitely a great conversation.
Yeah.
So
Been
as we
interesting.
it's very interesting, right? Because I sit around and I think about these things all the time. Like, what if, right? You know what I'm saying? What if I did this, right? Is there a cause and effect to it? If I did this, what's going to be the cause of it, right? And what is going to be the aftermath? And so I used to always teach my son this, and I teach myself this. You can dictate. There's consequences to every action.
Oh yeah.
You can dictate what sort of consequences that you want to have, either good or bad, through the choices that you make. So I always try to make good choices in life because I like the good consequences,
Mm-hmm.
and things like that, right? Because as the more you get older, the more you begin to um, appreciate the life that you've been given, because it's only temporary, right? It's only temporary, but it's what you do within that time frame that you're here.
100%.
How many people can you affect? How many laughs can you have? How many smiles can you generate and things like that? But can you do it without being affected by the consequences, by the outcome, without expecting an outcome from it, right? And just let things be.
It's like something I read recently, that at the end of the day, you can't take pictures with you. So no matter what sort of things you put up on social media, what lives that you see, you can't take that to the grave with you. What you can take and what people can see is memories that you've made with them.
Right. So make sure you make
It's
really
not
good
about
memories
those
with people.
perfect pictures. It's about the memories you've made with that person or the effect you had on them. Like, unfortunately, I had a funeral recently, and it was full to the brim. The person got a guard of honor, and a guard of honor with all the way through the service. But that person affected so many lives, and you could see that by what they said about the person and things like that. And it's it's nicer to have that than and an effect, and know that you've done that. You've sat there and affected lives, you've helped a person, you've saved lives, rather than sitting there and doing nothing.
Think that,
That's why I share my story.
Yeah, a very powerful story it is, because you've taken everything that you've gone through, managed to get yourself out of some really tough places, heal, and now look at you. You're out here in the world, changing people's lives, giving people a better understanding of how to deal with not only their mental health, but how to deal with their ADHD traumas and things like that, which is very, very inspiring. And again, like I said before, I'll say it again, thank you for the work that you do, because it's really important. And, your story is powerful, very inspiring. And so as we begin to wrap this up, Ileana, I got a couple more questions for you.
Go for it.
How can people find you?
I have various means of people finding me. So one is I run a group called the Empowered ADHD Collective on Facebook. I have TikTok at Force of Mind Limited is my business. Ileana Weinberg is my name, and you can find me on Facebook and add me personally. But yeah, I will add all the links that I needed. I'll send them to you, and you can share them.
Did you already send them to me? I think you did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you already sent it to me. So if anybody out there they want to contact Ileana, or either if you're struggling with ADHD, her links are in the YouTube channel. So if you haven't already, head on over there, tap on those links, connect with other people that are going through something similar. So now my second question to you, Ileana, would be, if you had a superpower, what would it be?
Wow. I used to want to read minds because I wanted. The reason why I used to want to read minds is because I always wanted to know what people thought about me. Because I also wanted to help those people that I saw were sad but didn't say anything. The quiet kid in the corner at school. I wanted to help that person because I knew they were going through something. I could read body language from a very young age, because of what I went through. So I always wanted to help that person, but then I realized that I'd hear other people's thoughts, and some of them I really, really wouldn't want to hear.
It can get pretty messy up there. I don't think I ever want to read anybody else's thoughts, because I'm just like, no, I can't even.
My brain is absolutely chaotic. I did a live the other day, because I also work for a company called Pharmacy, so I promote makeup, skincare, things like that. I was doing a get ready with me with makeup, and my brain was not on a level. I was really chaotic. I couldn't remember what I was saying. I was doing the wrong thing, and I was just I listened to it back, and I was like, what was I doing? Like, I shouldn't have even bothered. Like, the amount of thoughts that go on that come out loud.
But Ileana, the biggest blessing is that it shows that you're human, right? And no one's perfect. And
you're authentic and you're raw. I refuse not to be, because you see so much fakeness on Instagram, on TikTok, and all of these perfect people with their perfect lives. And even with AI now, you can get AI pictures, you can get AI scripts. I refuse to use it because it's not me. It's not authentic. It doesn't sound like me. And although it could be really easy to sit there and type into this crap into AI and have something like spewed out at me, it wouldn't be me. It wouldn't be authentic, and it wouldn't help anyone else. And
Well, it has its place, just like everything, right? So
Oh, of course, of
I've
course.
been around
Like
long
you
enough
can
to
use
see
it to.
technology come, right? And
You
develop
can use
into
it to
what it
help
is.
and aid and change.
Yes, it can be
You
a
know,
tool,
doing a
a useful
brainstorm.
tool.
Don't get me wrong, doing a brainstorming with AI is like so clever and so
Mhm.
cool. But then taking that information and making it your own is gonna work better. Well, it works better for me
There you
anyway.
go. There you go.
I
Because
can't sit there and it can help. It's an aid.
it can definitely be
But
a tool if you know how to use it and not be dependent on it, right?
yeah,
So now I have one more for you, Elena.
go for it.
If you could leave the audience with something, what would you leave them with?
Oh, live,
Mm,
live, but don't work to live. Live to live. As in,
oh my God.
take those memories, make those
Yeah.
memories. They are so important. Like literally, I've changed a lot recently in my life, and it's made a massive difference. I am affirming. I've got my gratitude down. I am literally like, if you talk to me about affirmations, I've got them coming out my ears. But I have also learned to take a step back and be present, because you're not going to have those moments again. Like my boys are growing up fast. They are 4 and 2. My eldest is going to reception in September, which is like big school after preschool. And I have realized that I am present, but because of my ADHD brain, my trauma and stuff like that, sometimes I haven't been as present as I wanted to be. And I've missed out on moments that could have been really special. So, like 2 weeks ago, we went on holiday to Hastings, and I put my phone down. I don't usually put my phone down for much, but I did. I spent that time with them. I sat there on the beach and listened to the waves. I took the sun in. I made pebble castles with them and found shells. And doing that, living, is what you need to do. And it's hard. It's not easy to live, but you've got those
Hmm.
memories that you make,
Can
and
I
they're
add
so
to that?
special.
Can I add to that?
Of course.
Because it's not easy to live, but it is easy to live, depending on how you look at your life, right?
Mm.
If you can, my mother taught me this along when I was a kid. She always said, "Be simple, keep it simple." Right? Life doesn't have to be complicated. We as human
No.
beings, we complicate life a little bit too much.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you can figure out at some point in your life what you want to do, and you can align yourself with that purpose, and if it's true to you, life becomes a little bit more simple, even with the challenges that come along with it, right? Because you could look at those challenges and look at them like lessons to be learned, right?
Yeah.
Experiences to be had, and again, memories to be made, conversations to be had, right?
Our
But
conversations are
if
everything.
conversations are
Conversations.
everything, but if you are if you're constantly in fight, flight, or freeze mode, life
Yeah.
becomes
It,
carries a different meaning. It becomes a little bit more complicated because now you're either
100%.
in one of three modes. You're either in victim, superhero, or let's see, I think I'm trying to think of the third one. Let's see, it's victim, superhero, or villain, right? So you constantly play those three roles, and it's a vicious circle. And sometimes it's so hard to get outside of that,
Oh,
and that's
100%.
where I think that life becomes complicated because you don't see you don't see the outside of your life. You just see the inner circle, the people that surround you,
Yeah,
because it's
it's looking to the light, isn't it? Looking for the. There's a thing that's been coming up a lot lately. Look for the glimmers. Instead
right.
of
Yes,
look for the glimmers. Look for the light.
and
Look for
that's
those
where
tiny
most
little things
people
in the moment.
complicate it. Yeah, I
Look for
find
the
that that's
butterfly.
where most people get it complicated. They miss the little glimmers of the life that they could have because it's so filled with the messiness of the life that they have.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Uh, oh man, that's so awesome. With that being said, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. For everybody who's been tuning in, thank you guys for tuning in. And again, if you want to connect with Ileana, her information is on the YouTube channel. I want to thank my guest Ileana for being on the show, sharing her story, her wisdom, and just all the tips and tools. Hopefully, you guys picked up on that as well with us. And yeah, with that being said, guys, it's Saturday. Go and enjoy your day. It's a beautiful day outside. Make memories, but don't forget to take care of yourself. And with that being said, guys, I'm going to see you guys in the next one. Have an amazing day. Peace.